Have you ever noticed that some of the busiest moments of your life are also the moments when you feel the least alive? Not because you are doing nothing, but because you are doing everything. You answer messages while eating, you think about tomorrow while talking to someone today, you finish one task only to remember five more waiting for you. Even when you finally sit down to rest, your body becomes still, but your mind refuses to follow. It starts replaying conversations that ended hours ago. Maybe you should not have said that. Maybe they misunderstood you. Maybe they think less of you now. And somehow, a single sentence spoken in 30 seconds can continue living inside your head for 3 days. It's strange. A conversation can end, a meeting can end, a relationship can end, but the mind rarely receives the memo. Instead, it keeps rewriting scenes that reality has already moved on from. Sometimes you imagine defending yourself in arguments that never happened. Sometimes you rehearse conversations that probably never will. Sometimes you lie awake at 2 in the morning solving problems that don't even exist outside your imagination. And the exhausting part is not that your mind is active, it's that it feels like you have no choice. Many people quietly believe this is simply what being responsible looks like. If I stop thinking, I will fall behind. If I stop worrying, I will become careless. If I stop pushing myself, I will lose everything I have worked for. So the mind keeps working overtime, believing it is protecting your future. Yet something does not add up. Human beings today have more technology than generation before them, more productivity tools, more knowledge, more opportunities, and somehow more exhaustion. We are becoming incredibly efficient at doing things while slowly forgetting how to be with ourselves. Maybe you have experienced this. You achieve something you have wanted for months, a promotion, a degree, a successful project. For few minutes, maybe a few hours, there is relief. Then the mind quietly moves the finish line. Now what? What's next? What if this is not enough? Without realizing it, you have started living inside a future that never arrives. Psychologists sometimes describe the brain as a prediction machine. Its primary job is not happiness, it's survival. Every second, your brain is making predictions about what might happen next based on what has happened before. This ability kept our ancestors alive. If rustling buses once hid danger, predicting danger became useful. But in modern life, those same survival systems often react to social uncertainty as if it were physical danger. An unanswered message, a critical comment, a disappointed look, a mistake at work. The brain begins filling in missing informations with imagined outcomes, not because it's broken, because prediction is what it was designed to do. This is why uncertainty often feels heavier than reality itself. The mind dislikes unfinished stories. It would rather invent an answer than remain in not knowing. Sometimes the answer it invents is painfully convincing. They ignored me because they don't respect me. I failed because I am not capable. They are succeeding because I am falling behind. Most of these stories never become reality. But your nervous system does not always know the difference. Your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, stress hormones prepare you for threat that exists mostly as imagination. The body responds to a story as though it were a fact. The fascinating part is that once the brain predicts something often enough, it begins searching for evidence that confirms its prediction. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. You stop noticing everything that contradicts your fear. You only notice what supports it. If you secretly believe you are not good enough, compliments feel accidental, while criticism feels like proof. If you believe people will leave you, Moments of affection become temporary, but moments of distance become permanent evidence. Reality has not changed, attention has, and attention quietly shapes experience. This is why two people can live through the same event and remember completely different versions of it. Memory is not a recording, it's reconstruction. Each time you remember something, your brain edits it slightly before storing it again. Over months and years, your memories become less like photographs and more like stories. Then something even stranger happens. You begin mistaking those stories for yourself. Instead of saying, I experienced failure, you begin saying, I am a failure. Instead of saying, I feel anxious today, you begin saying, I am an anxious person. A temporary experience slowly hardens into an identity, and identities are incredibly persuasive because once the mind decides who you are, it starts protecting that version of you, even if that version is making you suffer. Neuroscientists have observed that the brain prefers familiarity over uncertainty. Sometimes even painful familiarity feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. That's why people often return to habits they desperately want to escape, not because they enjoy suffering, because the brain recognizes the pattern, the known feeling less threatening than the unknown. Think about how often you have promised yourself that tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I will stop overthinking. Tomorrow I will stop checking my phone every 5 minutes. Tomorrow I will finally feel confident. Tomorrow I will stop needing everyone's approval. And tomorrow arrives carrying the same mind that made yesterday's promises. Slowly you begin believing the problem is your discipline or your motivation or your personality. But what if the problem is somewhere deeper? What if you have spent years trying to improve the person your mind has imagined while barely knowing the one who is actually living your life? There is an ancient question that has echoed through Indian wisdom for thousands of years. It is not how do I become successful. It is not even how do I become happy. The question is much quieter. Who is the one trying to so hard to become anything at all? If that question feels uncomfortable, that's because most of us have spent our lives hearing and learning how to manage our image before we ever learned how to understand ourselves. From childhood, we are asked what we want to become long before we are asked who we are. Our achievements become introductions. Our failures become private identities. Our roles become substitutes for our presence. Slowly, almost invisibly, life turns into a performance, not necessarily because someone forced us to perform, but because the human mind is deeply social. Neuroscience suggests that social acceptance is processed by many of the same brain networks that respond to physical pain. Being excluded once would have meant danger for our ancestors. So today, the brain still treats rejection as a threat worth avoiding. That is why a stranger's opinion can linger your mind longer than a compliment from someone who loves you. The mind is not trying to make you miserable, it is trying to keep you connected. But somewhere along the way, protection quietly becomes imprisonment. You stop asking what is true. You start asking what will people think. You stop asking what matters. You start asking what will make me look successful. And eventually, without realizing it, you begin living according to an audience that is not even watching as closely as you imagine. The mind can create an invisible courtroom. You become the accused. Your memories become the witnesses. Your fears become the prosecutors. And every small mistake becomes evidence that you are somehow not enough. The strange thing is that there is almost never a judge in that courtroom, only you, only your own attention, endlessly replaying the same case. Ancient Indian wisdom approached this problem from a direction that still feels surprisingly modern. The sages were less interested in changing behavior than in understanding the one who behaves, less interested in controlling thoughts than in discovering what exists before thought. One of the great declarations of the Upanishad is Ayam Atma Brahma. This very self is the limitless reality. At first, those words can sound impossibly abstract, but perhaps they become simple if we look at ordinary life. Have you ever noticed that you can observe your thoughts? You can hear them arguing, you can watch them worrying, you can even say, my mind won't stop. If you can notice the activity of the mind, then for at least one brief moment, the observer and the thought are not exactly the same. That small gap changes everything because suffering often grows when every thought is treated as identity. Freedom begins when thoughts become experiences rather than definitions. This is not about suppressing the mind. The brain evolved to think, it predicts, it remembers, it compares, it plans, it imagines. That is its nature. The question is not whether the mind should think. The question is whether every thought deserves your complete belief. There is an old story from the Mahabharata that feels unexpectedly relevant today. When Dronacharya gathered his students for an archery lesson, he placed a wooden bird high upon a tree. One by one, the students were asked a simple question before releasing the arrow. What do you see? Some saw the tree, some saw the branches, some saw the sky, some saw the bird. Then Arjuna stepped forward. What do you see? Dronacharya asked. Arjuna said, I see only the eye of the bird. Only then was he asked to release the arrow. The story is often told as a lesson about concentration, but perhaps it is also a lesson about attention itself. Your life moves forward, whatever repeatedly occupies your attention. Your attention is constantly consumed by comparison. Comparison becomes your world. If your attention endlessly circles imagined judgment, judgment becomes your reality, not because the world has changed, because your experience of the world follows the direction of awareness. Modern neuroscience echoes this in its own language. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. Attention is not only noticing reality, attention is helping shape the brain that will notice tomorrow's reality. Every repeated pattern becomes slightly easier to repeat again. This is how habits are built, not only habits of action, habits of identity, habits of fear, habits of hope, habits of seeing yourself. Perhaps this is why awareness is so much more powerful than force. Force fights the mind, awareness understands it, and what is understood no longer needs to remain unconscious. Maybe the greatest misunderstanding is not that you think too much, maybe it is that you have spent years trying to improve every part of your life except the one experiencing it. We polish our resume, we organize our calendars, we upgrade our phones, we optimize our schedules, we measure productivity down to the minute. Yet, the instrument through which every success, every relationship, every achievement, and every disappointment is experienced receives almost no attention. Imagine someone spending years carefully cleaning the windows of house while never noticing that the glass through which they look has slowly become clouded. The scenery is not the problem. The way it is being seen is. And perhaps that is why so many people reach goals they once dreamed about, only to discover that the person who arrived still feels restless. The destination changes, the inner lens did not. That is the quiet tragedy of modern ambition. We become highly skilled at building meaningful life on the outside while remaining strangers to the one living it on the inside. And it is here that one simple sentence suddenly begins to carry an entirely different weight. There is a moment in almost every life when effort stops feeling noble and starts feeling heavy, not because the work itself is difficult, but because the one doing the work has quietly become exhausted. You see it in the entrepreneur who finally builds the company they dreamed of, only to discover they no longer know how to sit with their own thoughts. You see it in the student who earns the highest grades but feel terrified that one failure will erase their worth. You see it in the parent who gives everything to their family while forgetting the inner world from which that love must come. You see it in the artist who creates beautiful things while silently believe they are never enough. From the outside, these lives appear successful. From the inside, they often feels like an endless negotiation with self. Perhaps that is because we have been taught to improve everything except the one who is experiencing everything. It is here that a simple observation from Sadhguru no longer sounds like advice. It sounds like a mirror. If you think your work is important, it is very important that you work upon yourself. Notice what he does not say. He does not ask you to abandon your work. He does not suggest that ambition is wrong. He simply redirects the direction of your effort. Before asking whether your work will change the world, ask what your work is doing to you. Every project shapes its creator. Every habit leaves fingerprints on the mind. Every repeated emotion slowly becomes part of the nervous system's default way of experiencing reality. The real question is never, what am I building? It is also, who am I becoming while I build it? There is a verse from the Bhagavad Gita that quietly illuminates this truth. Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayat atmaiva hyatmano bandhuratmaiva ripuratmana. Lift yourself by yourself. Do not let yourself fall. Your own mind can become your greatest friend, and your own mind can become your greatest enemy. The verse does not divide the world into enemies and allies, it points somewhere closer. The relationship that shapes every other relationship is the one you have with your own mind. That realization creates a profound shift. Maybe your mind is not broken, maybe it has simply become overtrained in survival and undertrained in awareness. Maybe anxiety is not proof that you are weak. Maybe it is a nervous system trying too hard to protect someone it believes is constantly in danger. Maybe comparison is not vanity. Maybe it is an ancient brain searching for belonging. Maybe perfectionism is not discipline. Maybe it is fear wearing the mask of excellence. When you see these patterns clearly, something unexpected happens. You stop declaring war on yourself, and the energy that was once spent resisting your own mind becomes available for understanding it. Understanding is quieter than motivation, but it lasts longer because awareness does not demand that you become someone else. It simply allows you to stop pretending to be someone you are not. This does not mean life suddenly becomes effortless. Deadlines still exist. Loss still hurts. People will still misunderstand you. Plans will still fail. The difference is that your inner state is no longer completely negotiated by outer events. You begin to notice thoughts without immediately becoming them. You begin to feel emotions without assuming they define you. You begin to pause before reacting, and in that pause, something extraordinary becomes possible. Choice. Not the choice to control life, the choice to respond consciously instead of automatically. That small space between stimulus and response has changed the course of countless lives, not because it removes suffering, but because it prevents unnecessary suffering from growing on top of inevitable pain. Perhaps peace has never been the absence of activity. Perhaps it has always been the absence of unconscious. Perhaps fulfillment is not hidden at the end of your achievement. Perhaps it quietly accompanies the person who knows how to remain present while achieving. And perhaps the greatest work you will ever do will never appear on a resume. No one may upload it. No certificate may recognize it. No social media post may capture it. Yet, every conversation you have, every decision you make, every relationship you nurture, every dream you pursue will carry the invisible influence of that work. Because wherever you go, you take yourself with you. For a long time, many of us have believed that if we could just change the circumstances, we could finally feel different. A better job, a better relationship, a better city, a better income, a better version of life. Sometimes those changes are necessary, but even the most beautiful destination cannot permanently quiet a mind that has never learned how to be at home with itself. So perhaps today is not an invitation to fix yourself, it is an invitation to become deeply interested in yourself, to observe without immediately judging, to notice without rushing to change, to ask with genuine curiosity who is experiencing this moment, not as a philosophical exercise, as a lived experience. Because the quality of your life is shaped not only by what happens to you, but by the quality of awareness through which it is experienced. If these reflections helped you see yourself a little more clearly, consider subscribing to our channel. Every video here is an invitation not to escape life, but to understand the one who is living. And before you leave, spend a moment with this question. If every achievement, every title, every role were taken away tomorrow, who would still remain quietly witnessing it all? Namaskar.